So, hi, both. Welcome to Director's Notes.
Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Thank you.
You. If you would please just take a minute to obviously introduce yourselves and the film, please.
Yeah, sure. So, hi there. My name's Cécile Embleton. I'm a documentary director based in London, and Mother Vera is my first feature-length film.
And I'm Alys Tomlinson, and I'm a photographer based in London. And Cecilia and I worked together co-directing Mother Vera over 6 years. And this is my first foray into filmmaking as well.
Wow. I mean, I loved that. I was having a look on the website earlier and sort of both of your backgrounds. And I mean, I suppose that's my first question. How did you find each other, connect on this project? And how did you find, obviously, your bit different backgrounds coming together to make this film?
Well, we actually met years ago. Cecilia and I met years ago on an open day at the National Film and TV School that neither of us ended up really pursuing or applying for fully. Um, I was interested in cinematography. Were you interested in the directing course, Cecile, at that point? I don't
I
remember.
was interested in the cinematography and also the documentary director's course. Yeah.
Yeah. So we met there and then we stayed in touch, and Cecile did many things, including being in Rome and working for production companies, I think. But the whole kind of film, Mother Vera, came from a photographic project. So Cecilia and I were working together on a photographic project about pilgrimage called Ex Voto, and that involved going to various locations around Europe. And one location we went to was called Grabarka, which is on the eastern side of Poland. It borders with Belarus. And we were looking for like interesting pilgrims to photograph, which is not always easy because a lot of pilgrims wear kind of anoraks and carry flasks and aren't that
Not very
excited looking.
obvious. Yeah.
But then we spotted Vera. We didn't know she was Vera at the time. And she was standing very still, dressed head to toe in her black robes with a donation box around her neck. And we immediately looked at each other and said, oh, we have to ask her if she would be up for being photographed for this project. So we approached her, and there's always that anxiety when you're approaching a stranger. You know, are they going to let you in? Are they going to respond to your kind of invitation? And she said yes straight away. And we took her to this opening in the forest and took a picture of her on this very old-fashioned large format camera, film camera in black and white. And during that exchange, she invited us to her monastery in Belarus, and we were able to get a small grant from Sony, which allowed us to go for our first trip. So we were actually together when we very first met her, and in many ways it was quite a lucky encounter, really. And also taking the initiative to actually, I mean, in that split second, if we hadn't approached her, then this film would never have happened. So it's just like those tiny moments that can make a huge difference to many people's lives.
Yeah. I mean, that convent, it seems like it's incredibly remote, like far away from everything. And because of what they do there with the rehabilitation and everything, how were they sort of in terms of reacting to you wanting to be there and to film and to have these cameras? What were their reactions?
So we were really lucky in that the kind of head of the community had seen Alice's work, her photography, and really respected the style of it. It's very classical and, it's got a very sensitive and kind of beautiful approach. And so that really was our kind of way in. Like, you need to have permission from the person who's running the community. And then as we were there with a camera, initially, people are a bit shy, you're not really sure about it. But then, after return visits and being present for all sorts of liturgies and baptisms and eating with the sisters and eating with the men, who are in rehab, but then, we just became accepted in the community. Um, so yeah, it was a matter of time, really. I mean, yeah, I think actually we only had in our first 5 trips 32 filming days, which doesn't
Okay.
seem like very much, but if you're there every day, really embedded in the community, then you start to build relationships and people start to trust you. And what's so amazing about filming in a monastery where more or less, they're in ritual and what's going to happen every day. You know what things are going to look like. So in terms of cinematography and framing, you can anticipate, what the frame is going to be. And that was really amazing. The kind of rhythm of life there
Yeah.
enabled us to, create the form of this documentary in its language.
Yeah. Because I mean, the form in itself, it's beautifully slow. And it unravels in its own time. You've got those incredibly, I found, poignant bits when she's especially with her animals and the horses, that love and that connection. But there's a lot of kind of bleak moments as well. So how did you decide what the trajectory of the story would be? And obviously it's Vera's self, sort of her coming to terms with herself and what she's going to do.
It's a big question and a good
Yeah.
question. And I think this is also kind of in response to your earlier question that I didn't really answer about how we collaborated. Like both of our approaches, mine through my photography and Cecile's through her previous filmmaking, I think we both work in quite a slow, quite a still, quite a thoughtful way. So immediately we were aligned in terms of the kind of film that we wanted to make. But in terms of these what you talk about, I mean, that's really there's a lot of extremities in the film and a lot of opposites. So you have the warmth of the community, but then you have these bleak landscapes that are kind of entangled branches or the howling gales, and they kind of the idea is that they draw you in psychologically into Vera's inner world. So you have the contrast of the kind of warmth and the cavernous and the shadowy aspects of the monastery, but also this very strict, disciplined lifestyle. But then Vera is able to find some kind of freedom when she's with the horses and when she's with nature. And in many ways, I think we both felt that Vera kind of connects with horses in a way that she almost doesn't with humans. Like she feels that there's this very mutual understanding there between her and the animals. And that's when she felt safest. That's when she felt most kind of comfort. And she feels she communicates with them. Well, watching her like with them was extraordinary when we first went, as you can imagine. This almost piece of performance are unravelled in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. I mean, there's that beautiful moment where she's getting ready and she just sweeps her sort of habit or whatever onto the back of the horse and they go off together. And it was so moving and so poetic. And was she very open with you?
Yeah, I mean, as Alice mentioned, she invited us within about 5, 10 minutes to Belarus when we first met her. So I think for her, there was an attraction meeting these young women who are artists working with this big old camera and, talking about imagery and literature and film. And that was very attractive for her. And she's a very creative person herself. But I would say, I mean, you asked on how did we decide on the narrative? We didn't really, of course, know that we didn't know that Vera had been thinking of leaving the monastery for 10 years when we met her. But there was a very strong sense that she had this kind of energy about her that she needed to communicate something that wasn't able to come out. It was forbidden. And that kind of was always there in our relationship together, through the camera. There was this exploration of whatever this was that she needed to express. But we didn't know she was going to leave. So in the beginning, obviously it's about her story and her past kind of evolved. She shared more with us. But I think in the beginning, it was obviously about her past and Vera's story and her place in this community, but very much about an atmosphere, like the atmosphere of this place and the fact that it's a place where all of these men who are there to make a second chance for themselves. They're there in kind of recovery, which in a way was it's the same thing that Vera went through and kind of still is going through right now. So, yeah, it was more about an atmosphere, but we didn't, I mean, the backbone of the film really are the interviews with Olga, and she wasn't able to speak to us fully and honestly about everything that had happened in her past and wanting to leave until she left.
Yeah, of
So
course.
really our contact time with Vera in the monastery was not very much. I mean, we had 4 trips to Belarus and probably around 20 days shooting with her in the monastery. So, and then she left, and we thought, oh my gosh, like, what do we do? Like, that's it, draw a line. There's nothing else that can be filmed of her in the monastery, but we do have an end to the film now.
You do.
So in terms of like how did we decide on the narrative, it was, really capturing this community and the essence of what's going on there, which is transformation, essentially, and Vera within that and her relationship with the men and how they mirror her past.
Mm.
But we were very lucky with the narrative. I mean, also, when we found out, we were very worried about her because that's a really big deal, right? Leaving a monastic community after 20
Huge,
years.
huge. That's your
Um,
entire sort of existence, isn't it?
exactly. And then the question was, how do we show that? Because obviously we didn't film it, which you never really would be able to film, even
Mm.
if we had been there.
Yeah.
So that was a creative challenge that, yeah, it was beautiful to work out, within the language of the film, what would be the best way to tell that part of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, talking about sort of the language of the film, and as I mentioned, the cinematography is just incredible. You've got this very stark landscape. You've got, like you said, the dark corners of the monastery, these sort of big, I find them very imposing, iconographic, big things. What cameras were you using? What lights were you using?
Well, we were lucky that we were loaned some equipment from Sony. So we used various mirrorless Sony cameras. In the monastery, most of it was shot rather on a tripod. So
Mhm.
we were very much mimicking stills photography. And as you would have noticed, there are many shots that are held almost like they are still. So that was a very deliberate device that we used. Also, so that the viewer and the audience would obviously very much spend time with those images and in those moments. You're not just cutting from one scene to the next. So that was very deliberate. Likewise, we everything shot with available light. As Cecile said, we weren't there that long, but we were there long enough to understand the rhythms and the routines of the monastery and the sisters. So we would know when the light shaft was coming through a window at a particular time. We would
Yeah.
know when they were ringing the bells, which was often about 4 in the morning. So it was a very early start. But because we understood the way the monastery worked after several visits, we kind of knew like when the best time was to make these shots. So that was through building a familiarity, really, and also obviously a trust with the people within the monastery. But if you looked at our kit, you'd probably think we're very lo-fi. It's like a couple of wobbly tripods. Well, one of them wasn't wobbly, but it was masses of kit, and also we shot mostly all on fixed lenses. So a lot of the shooting was on like a 50mm and 85mm, so you get that lovely depth of field. So
Yeah.
again, we're both drawing, I think, on what Cecile has a background in photography as well, but we both have this alignment in terms of aesthetic style to bring you emotionally closer to what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, it does that just immensely. And it seems like an obvious choice, but was there a decision between shooting in color or black and white?
For Alice, it was a very clear decision that it would be black and white from the beginning. And obviously the photograph of Vera was black and white. And for me, it was more of a process of understanding why the choice. I'd never shot in black and white before, and I was a little bit afraid of it just being a form without really, I needed to feel organically, like through the content and as the story evolved, like why it made sense to be black and white. And of course, as we, kept going, it was very clear that black and white emphasizes the extremity of Vera's story, the extremity of the story of the men, the extremity of that place. We ended up using a lot of winter in the film to
Yeah.
emphasize, as Alice was saying earlier, like the fragility, well, the contrast of the warm and the cold, and, the internal candlelit, underground crypts and the meetings where everybody's together, and then these vast, expansive landscapes that are very open. And cold. So yeah, the black and white is is very powerful, I think, to emphasize what Vera's lived and what's going on, this kind of crucible of transformation, at this monastery. And then when it came to Camargue and we were filming in Camargue, when I was looking through the camera, it just felt like it was color, right? Because there's a burst of nature, and
Yeah.
obviously Olga's got this amazing connection to the horses and nature. And so color just felt natural, like it was a new stage, obviously, in her life. And so then the color was kind of a rupture. in the film. The idea is to create a rupture and also to come much closer to her and show her, because in the black and white you could think she was like 24, and with the veil, like she's quite,
Especially
I
as she's
mean,
so covered. Hmm.
exactly, and that's exactly what was going on with her, which that she was literally covered and was not able to express her true kind of desires and what, had evolved within her over those years in the monastery. It was kind of enclosed in these heavy robes. Um, and which is, yeah, which we also show in the beginning of the film, beginning with just the robes and this kind
Mm.
of black phantom figure traveling. And then by the end, of course, she's naked with no robes, which show this identity. And she's just fully, her own self surrendering in this river, kind of the river of life. It's kind of cheesy, but that's the idea of it, is a full um surrender. And yeah, I think the color brings you in, it brings you closer to her. We also had a lot more moving camera, so camera on handheld or with a steady cam, to create a different language and to be close to her in that world.
Yeah. You
Um,
immediately feel it. Like I almost let out like a breath of relief. Uh,
yeah, people have said that. It feels like coming
yeah.
out from underground.
Yeah, but
Yeah, like you
in
just
a
breathe.
beautiful way. So it's not
Mm.
that I felt like I was trapped before, but then when it comes to this, you're sort of, yeah, it's a new life, it's a new awakening. There was something that came off my chest. It was beautiful.
Yeah, people have mentioned similar feelings, and some people don't notice the color. I
Okay,
mean, they have that feeling, but they don't notice because it's so gradual.
yeah.
Eventually they notice, but when it's happening, it's just people have said that they haven't realized until later on, which is quite interesting because we tried to make it very subtle. Originally, we had quite a hard cut to color,
Hmm.
to really make a big impact, and then we realized it needed to be more subtle and gradual.
Yeah,
And the shot of her sleeping is quite important in the beginning of the color because kind of also plants this idea that everything could have been a dream, right? Which is also how Olga speaks about her lives, the different lives she's lived. That it feels like a dream. It feels so far away. Um, so yeah, but it was quite scary to choose color at the end
yeah,
initially as well. When you really think, oh my God, are we going to make this transition? You just, she says, I feel free and liberated, and then you put color. It feels, but obviously she has done a difficult time, so there's many more layers to it. Just being like, I'm free, life is great. I'm
yeah.
an
No, and
individual.
it's like I said, sort of at the beginning when I went in, because sometimes I find things are shot in black and white because people think it looks more artistic, and I'm like, but that
Mm,
doesn't serve your story, that doesn't serve your narrative.
no,
Um,
yeah,
so then and as soon as that opens and you're into it, it just makes total sense. But then the switch into color just made total sense as well. There was no part of me that felt jarred by any of it. How have you found sort of reactions generally? Because you've been on an amazing festival circuit. So how's it been?
it's been great. Alice, you want to talk about how it's been?
Yeah, it's been really exciting. I mean, I think people who really get the film and something in it resonates with them, they really get it, and it, can um, yeah, resonate with them on quite a deep level, which is what we were hoping for. I mean, we understand that a largely black and white film about an Orthodox nun is not the easiest sell necessarily to audiences. But I mean, there's been some, incredible kind of comparisons to Bellatar and Tarkovsky and these complete kind of legends, which is obviously wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's been a very kind of welcome reaction. We've had very warm like receptions. People have been moved by the film and touched by the film, and I think also maybe audiences who may have been put off by it being in some way a religious film or a film about God realize that that's not actually at the heart of the film at all, and it's almost surprised them the way that they may have connected with aspects of Vera and aspects of the kind of wider human condition. So that's been really interesting to hear as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I felt the exact same way. I try to go into films as blind as possible. I'm always drawn towards documentaries. And when I saw this, I sort of read a bit about it and I was like, no, not really for me. But then I was just,
Fair
generally at the
enough.
festival, you're hearing what people are talking about, you're reading different things. And I was like, right, I'm going to take some quiet and watch it. And then literally from the second minute, I was like, well, this is just stunning. And I messaged my editor as well, and I was like, this is amazing. And I want to interview these ladies. So yeah, I have to admit that my initial
There you
misgivings,
go.
yes, were the same. But then
Yeah, I understand people's apprehension.
yeah,
Yeah.
You
but
read.
then
It's
that's
very hard
so
to get across in the synopsis as well what it's truly about. It's hard to explain just with a few words,
Mm. It
which is
has, I
always a
mean,
challenge. But
people, I mean, there's also a niche of like kind of geeks that love it, like an astrophysicist who came up to us at the end of one of the screenings in Poland was like, oh my God, and he loved like the metaphysical quality of the film.
yeah.
There seems to be like a group, that kind of group. And yeah, I mean, maybe we need to think more about our PR and how we communicate all of these dimensions of the film, because I think you're right on the surface. It's it's some people, yeah, are put off, as you were.
Yeah. Well, that's why interviews like this are great because we can shine a light on it and sort of, with director's notes, I've asked you sort of a lot of the details about the making of it, but in our introductions, it's also about, my feelings and what I felt towards the film. And, I'm
Mm,
always very honest. So it will be one of those things that you just need to open yourself up to it. And I
mm,
say that with a lot of films, just sit there and open your mind and it will be worth every minute of it.
mm. I think that's it with this film. You kind of have to be willing to go on the journey,
Yeah.
and be in the stillness. It's kind of really asking you to slow down, really asking you to go to a different pace. And I think what we hope is that it encourages, self-reflection and being in stillness within yourself,
Mm.
through connecting to Vera's struggle and what she's dealing with.
Yeah. And so with Vera, how much input did she have towards the end? Once you'd edited it, did she see the film first? Did she not care? Or,
she was very good during the process at because we had built up this relationship over a number of years. She was very good at allowing us to get on with it, really. And she never, what surprised me actually was that she never asked to see shots. She never asked how she looked. I mean, she would ask how it was going, but she never requested to see specific scenes or anything like that. So she really um, allowed us a freedom, which was a great kind of privilege to work on it the way we wanted. So she was very good at kind of stepping back in that respect. We did show her the final edit probably about a year ago now. And
Yeah.
I think she didn't really know how to take it, first of all. I mean, imagine seeing your your life and your past and your history and your pain and your struggles in a film, in the format of a film. She very much appreciated I suppose, the artistry and the creative input. And she found parts of it very funny as well, which we were quite relieved about. Like there were certain aspects that she found quite humorous. But now I think she feels that she says that it's like been a great honor for her to be involved in the film. And obviously we feel greatly honored that she um, allowed us to enter her life in the way that we did. So yeah, I think it's been a big part, it's been a big part of her life, but it's another chapter with Vera. You never know, you never quite know what's next.
yeah, well, fair enough. I
And
can
in some ways she's taken it in her stride, but it ultimately, emotionally and psychologically, and in terms of our relationship with her, it has definitely had a big impact on her.
Mm. There's
yeah.
often a question in audiences like, do you think the film affected her choice? And she has responded in Q&A and said, yeah, absolutely. Like, not that she obviously had already decided she wanted to leave, but it helped her reach that decision,
Yeah.
which she'd been grappling with for 10 years.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
yeah, I
very
could feel that. I don't think it's
mm.
like you came in and then she decided, right, I'm off. Uh,
Right. No, no, no. But it
no.
was very beautiful to feel that intention and not know what it was, and feel that she is trying to, that, yeah, was, yeah, a really special thing to kind of explore it in an unspoken way with the camera.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. And then the catharsis, obviously, of her finally leaving. And then it was a bit of a process to continue filming because it was very, very delicate. and initially she didn't want to actually continue filming.
Okay.
So the film was hanging kind of in the balance, and I mean, it's kind of a longer story, but we ended up having a meeting with her and basically asking her, look, saying, look, it was Alice who said, look, we really need,
An
we
Irish
really
bar in
need,
Minsk as well, which was a bit of a
yeah,
strange setting.
in an Irish bar. And you just said, we have to, we've put so much time into this. And she actually was quite moved, I think, that, to hear that we were genuinely interested in, of course, in her, because I think she'd been attached to this identity, of course, that she'd lived for 20 years and was this on the threshold and this mad change and feeling kind of, who am I? And
Mm.
obviously that was, you know, amazing for us to accompany her in that. And to then continue, our gaze on her with
Mm.
the camera, but as she was just herself with no identity. And that was quite a delicate time, but she was happy in the end.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
you saying that no identity, I sort of really felt that when she was on the horse and the woman was going, no, you don't sit like that. You sort of sit like this and trying to adjust her. And, I sort of felt like, gosh, I think she knows how to sit on a horse, but she's trying to find a new way. I don't know. I felt that was a real sort of difficult moment.
Quite a
mm,
difficult scene to witness because, in a way, she's being humiliated by this woman who clearly has a very high opinion of herself. And we've already seen Vera, like, at very close proximity to the horses. We've seen her relationship with them. We've seen how she relates to them. And then she's being told by this French woman, you're kind of doing everything wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but in a way, she shrugs that off. And I think that's, and she does physically kind of make a face and shrug it off.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's very much testament to her own, strength and fortitude, and shows how resilient she really is, because that didn't actually stop her, although it wasn't what she had dreamed of, because she had gone to France with this idea of being taught by this highly esteemed woman who's very um, very high up in the dressage world. But
Okay.
of course, the world that Vera was interested in with the horses is almost the exact opposite of the dressage
Yeah.
world. She's very instinctive with them. She's very intimate with them. She's almost sensual with them. Whereas Danny in the dressage world it's all about formality. It's all about rigor, and it again echoed the discipline that she'd escaped in the convent. So you have this like other level of um, rules and regulations, but actually she handles it. I mean, she's exhausted by the whole thing, but ultimately she handles it pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
mm.
And do you know if she's still there?
Oh no, she's not there.
Okay. I'm
Thank,
kind of relieved knowing that.
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I feel like
Thank
she needs
goodness.
to go, I don't know, this just might be me, but I feel like she needs to go live in a beautiful just farm or a cowboy sort of setting somewhere and just ride with the horses and, just that to be her life rather than any kind of strict rules or pomp or dressage.
Mm,
She's very much a free spirit, so I think that's what she also hopes. But the reality is that she left in her 40s and she's rebuilding herself, her
Yeah.
identity, who she is as a person, but also on a practical level, because she left with no passport, no CV, no formal qualifications, no friends, really, nowhere to live, no bank account, like nothing, no possessions.
Yeah.
So she really had to, which we believe is a really incredibly courageous thing that she did to make that decision. But
That's
she's really
amazing.
restarting her life in midlife, really.
Hmm.
mm,
So yeah, I mean, she's got a strong idea, I think, of how she sees her life in the future, but it's how she gets there. And I see her, yeah, perhaps doing equine therapy or something. Again, something very much with horses that involves kind of heightened emotions and that is cathartic in some way, and perhaps it also helps others. But yeah, maybe she'll end up in Arizona or something on a ranch.
mm.
You never know. You never
You
know with
never know. You never know what's coming next.
yeah.
And
So what
that is,
about you two? Are you going to continue working together?
so this was like a kind of organic, it's just a serendipitous kind of evolution, I suppose, of having worked together 5 years on Alice's evocative project and Vera. It just, yeah, there were many things that just made sense to work. I mean, Alice, probably never had dreamed of making a feature film and it kind of turned up, so I think, yeah, everything that we'd done in religious communities before that kind of fed into this naturally.
Mm.
So I think it's a bit of a one-off, you know?
But that's beautiful.
Hmm.
Those those creations are so special that you like
Mm,
found each other at that point in time, your interests, everything aligned, and this is what's come of it.
mm,
I think that's
absolutely.
really beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for taking the time.
Thank you
Oh,
for
thank
your
you very much,
interest.
Emma. Thank you.
Yeah.